Closed captioning for Lakeland Currents is supported by the Minnesota Department of Commerce, Telecommunications Access Minnesota, and Nisswa Tax Service. Nisswa Tax Service, tax preparation for businesses and individuals. Across from City Hall in Nisswa and online at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Lakeland Currents, where tonight we're going to look at the rapidly changing world of the newspaper industry. And we're going to start our show this evening with a short segment that Annie Cooke did with one of the reporters for the Brainerd Dispatch, Matt Erickson. Let's take a look at that and we'll be right back.
Just be prepared for anything.
That advice comes from reporter Matt Erickson, who knows firsthand the changes in the newspaper business. When he started at the Dispatch nearly a decade ago, things were a lot different.
It's just a notepad and a pencil or a pen.
But now technology has taken over and reporters must adapt.
It's been harder than you'd think to remember when you go out somewhere and you're interviewing someone, you're writing down your interview. To remember then, get some video, you got to think of that. Not just walking away and observing the scene by yourself and writing your notes.
Reporters are also doing a lot more than what was originally expected of them.
I never thought I'd be a photographer or be taking my own photos, but we have a limited staff.
This multitasking is due in part to the ever-growing online medium.
We're more web-oriented, so trying to get things out on the web right away, especially breaking news.
The Brainerd Dispatch has had a website since April 1996, and though their viewing trends are the same with obituaries and news taking the top spots, it's just the place people read the information that's changing.
Online traffic continues to grow for newspapers. The BrainerdDispatch.com gets around 50 to 60,000 page views a day, which translates into about 1.5 million page views a month.
It gets the information out there faster, and I don't think that can be seen as bad in any sense.
News, after all, is a 24/7 industry. For Lakeland News at 10, I'm Annie Cooke.
I remember when I was a junior in high school, I signed up for a class in Brainerd, that's where I went to high school, called Current Events. I think I was a junior, and to be honest, I think I probably signed up for it because it looked like kind of an easy class. But it actually changed my life in the sense that it got me really interested in reading newspapers. And to this day, I read 2 to 3 newspapers a day, probably 3 to 4 on a Saturday and a Sunday. So I'm kind of a newspaper junkie. So when I started reading about the year the newspaper died, 2009, thought this was a really good topic to have some experts come in and talk about this. I have in my hands here a Silicon Insider. It's called the Silicon Alley Insider. And it says the newspaper industry died in 2009. 105 newspapers have been shuttered. 10,000 people have lost their jobs. Print ad sales fell 30% in the first quarter, and 23 of the top 25 newspapers reported circulation declines of between 7 and 20%. Another thing they said is that Craigslist ate the classified ads, eHarmony stole the personals, Google took the tiny ads from the weird products, and Macy's can email their clients anytime they want to do a special ad. So this world is really changing. Is it as bleak as it sounds? Well, that's what we're going to find out tonight. I have 2 very, very knowledgeable, interesting people here tonight to talk about the newspaper industry. Terry McCollough, just found out tonight, is the 7th generation member in the newspaper industry, 4 in the Brainerd area. So he's the 4th generation in the Brainerd area. Terry is the publisher of the Brainerd Dispatch. Bill Albrecht is the publisher and president of the St. Cloud Times in St. Cloud, Minnesota, originally from Dubuque, Iowa.
Yep.
And he has started in this career as an ad salesman for a paper, and has worked his way up to the point where you both look so relaxed, I can't believe it's that easy, is it? What's going on here, Terry?
Well, some of what you're talking about there, Ray, is absolutely true, but there's another side to it. I can say categorically that there are more people reading the Brainerd Dispatch than at any time in history. The difference is that they're no longer just reading it on what we call dead trees, which is the print edition. We also have an electronic side online, and we have a huge number of people that read there. So if you add those 2 audiences together, and in many cases those audiences are separate. People who tend to read print don't necessarily read online and vice versa. You add the 2 together, we've never been viewed by more people than we have right now.
Is that the case in St. Cloud too, Bill?
Absolutely. The major thing that has changed, and your opening piece alluded to it, 10, 15 years ago, both Terry and I were able to print and publish a newspaper. And anymore, we are not only doing a newspaper, but we're doing digital, we're doing video, we're doing our audio casts, we are even doing mobile. And so what used to be a product of one that would have X amount of readers, now we have readers across the entire spectrum. So that's how our readership is increasing. To the points that you brought up there are absolutely some of those things happening. But at the same time, some of the newspaper companies are in partnership with a lot of those companies. An example being Cars.com is one of the leading automotive websites in the country. And there are many newspaper companies who are Cars.com partners. So while Cars.com is getting automotive advertising, those newspapers are also getting online revenue from it.
You said something about eHarmony.
Yep.
What's the connection between your paper and eHarmony?
A lot of these major brand websites have partnership agreements. And so if you go and in fact do our site, you can go do eHarmony through our site. And whether they're franchise agreements and or revenue share agreements, we can also participate and make profit through those venues as well. It's not that it's all rosy, and we're fighting the recession just like everyone else. I don't know what the national statistics are, but as a percentage, I'm not sure the newspaper industry has laid off a lot more as a percentage than a lot of other industries within the country in the last 2 years.
With our lead-in piece that Annie Cooke did, it sounds like when you do hire people now, you have to hire them with a different set of skill sets than just being a writer. Is that fair to say?
That's absolutely true. We're looking for more skills, a greater variety of skills. The traditional newspaper reporter, as Matt was alluding to, with the pad and paper and the hat with the little press card in it, doesn't exist anymore. They have to know the electronic side of the business as well, for sure.
What kind of readership do you have with your two companies, your two businesses? I mean, you're both daily papers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And St. Cloud, you cover, I would suspect, a very large area in the central part of the state.
And we cover with our print product, we cover about a 45-mile radius.
And what would your subscriptions be, roughly?
Our daily, we're at about 25,000. Our Sunday, we're about 35,000. When you take our readership, that puts us up into the 60,000 readers, and this is print only, and 80,000 readers. Wow. We net about 15,000 additional readers a day that don't read the print product, but read us online only.
Wow. How about the Dispatch?
I have really similar numbers, smaller than St. Cloud. We're a smaller community, but at our high point, we had daily circulation of about 14,000. Today it's about 12,000. The difference is, back in the days when I had 14,000 subscriptions during the day, I had no online readership at all. Today I will have about 100,000 unique visitors per month to my website. You add those together, and as I said earlier in the piece, we've never had so many people reading the Brainerd Dispatch. It's really quite remarkable. And the real key factor is, we've done a lot of analysis of our audience. 92% of the people who are on our online audience do not take the print Dispatch.
Really?
So it's really two separate audiences.
Have you been able to decipher what the ages are of those groups?
Yes, and again, we know the demographics really quite well. The online audience is much younger. More than half of my online audience is between the ages of 18 and 44. The traditional newspaper reader, Ray, you and I are of the same age, we're baby boomers. Those people are print readers, by and large, and they're gradually phasing out. To put it very bluntly, we're dying off. And so the print readers are older and gradually disappearing. The new readers are online, younger.
What are some of your unique challenges in trying to generate revenue through this transition? I mean, I'm guessing that's a tough thing to figure out.
You've hit the nail on the head. Bill and I were talking about this over dinner before we came over here tonight, and monetizing the online reader is the challenge that newspapers face. For decades, literally hundreds of years, we've known how to do the print side. But all of a sudden we have this new challenge. We've got these new readers. How do we get enough money in to support the news gathering operation? So that's the trick we're up against.
And it's a challenge on multiple sides. It's also a challenge for retailers because the online experience, be it at your PC or laptop or on a mobile phone, is a different experience that the reader wants. And so helping them get through the phases of, it's not necessarily taking your print ad and put it online. You may have to go to some video, you may have to do some things online in order to get people to their website, which 20 years ago you're trying to get them through their front door. And now they want them to go to their website. So it's a model challenge, not only from the standpoint of the revenue model for the newspaper, but also for retailers to figure out how to take advantage of that audience.
Bill, you mentioned something about a little earlier about how many newspapers there are in the country, and a percentage of them are really not weekly or daily papers, they're weekly papers. Could you share with us what
I don't
that
know
was?
the exact percentages, but I do know that there's 1,400 daily newspapers in the United States. Most of the ones that are on the 105, I think you said, that have closed have been daily newspapers. But the majority of newspapers in the country are actually weeklies or just a couple times a week. In Minnesota, I'm on the Minnesota Newspaper Association board, and of our membership, 80% of it is weekly newspapers. And so while it's not the Chicago Tribune, when you add up all those weekly newspapers in the Midwest, all of a sudden you have an audience that's as large as the Chicago Tribune. And most of the things you're hearing about the newspaper industry are happening at the major metropolitan areas. In some cases, the further you get away from a major metropolitan area, the better off the market has been, not only for newspapers, but the economy in general.
And the recession obviously has really hurt your advertisers, as it has all media businesses, radios, and I'm sure that's a huge factor, isn't it?
It's a very large factor. We, and I think Terry agrees, we're about 2 weeks behind any retailer, meaning if a retailer has had a good week, 2 weeks later, we're in there, we have the ability to sell them and garner ad revenues. If you have a bad week, they need to watch their purse strings as well. And so we're not that far removed from Main Street. And again, that's one of the other factors that differs for Terry and myself versus the metropolitan area, who relies far more on national brand advertising as opposed to the local shoe store.
You hear so many people say, well, I don't need to read the paper anymore because I can get it on a blog. I get all this information on a blog. Why should I buy a newspaper? I don't know that a lot of people understand that information that gets to blogs comes from street reporters, people who are out there beating the bush. Isn't that true?
Somebody has to originally go out and report on what's happening. And whether it is a metro daily or certainly in a small community like ours and like St. Cloud, our reporters out on the street are the ones that are covering the news. If we don't do it, where will it come from? And the information that's on the blog, somebody has to find it somewhere. And I've got a staff of 14 full-time people in my newsroom, plus a few part-timers. If they went away tomorrow, who would report the news? Obviously, Lakeland Television has got some assets in that direction, but I don't think that they can fill in the gap that we would create. And certainly the local radio stations can't either. So I challenged a couple of groups that I've talked to. If we don't cover it, who will?
I would think St. Cloud and Brainerd are similar in that radio stations get their information off the AP or off wire services or off of your services. If it's a local story, that's not always coming off from one of the broader news organizations. So that would really be something, wouldn't it, if you lost that ability to cover the news at the local level?
Our franchise is local, and people can pick up the national or international stories from dozens of different sites. You can go almost anywhere. But what's happening, to the local city council, or in our case, several city council, school board, county, things that are happening that affect the lives of the people in Brainerd or St. Cloud, we're really the only people reporting them. And people will have to find our news if they're going to find it.
I'm asking this question because I have some experience in my own business. How tough is it to generate revenues off of trying to get people to advertise online? Is that a hard sell at this stage, or is it similar to a newspaper ad?
It's getting easier, and I'm not sure if easier is the right word as much as everyone is understanding it more and getting better at it. 5 years ago, it was very much an educational process from the standpoint of you go out and talk to somebody, and the first reaction was, well, I don't have a website, I can't advertise online. And you sort of got through that standpoint. Now, it's getting easier, and one of the big differences in the business model is the rates in what you can charge for advertising isn't as much. But on the other hand, the ability to deliver it is a fraction of the cost. As Terry alluded to earlier, the paper cost, the ink cost, the delivery cost. When you publish online, you publish once and 100,000 people can see it. We don't have to get 100,000 papers to somebody's doorstep. So the business models there changed, and it really is part of the sophistication of the advertiser. And it's getting much easier as they now are using online more and more, as they see what competitors are doing and what some of the national brands are doing, and we can go and now offer and say, we can do that for you locally.
Are your papers both owned by a parent company?
Yes.
And are they the same company, or are they different companies?
No, different. We're a part of Morris Communications, and we're based out of Augusta, Georgia. We have 13 daily newspapers, plus a variety of magazines. We have some radio stations and a variety of other things. But we're quite small compared to Bill's parent company.
And what's your parent company, Bill?
Gannett.
Gannett?
We're a Gannett-owned paper. We have 83 newspapers in the United States, plus some in England as well, located out of Washington, D.C.
So do you have a fair amount of autonomy at the local level when you make decisions, or are those made by boards for you?
I would say this, when it comes to news gathering and the way we handle the news product, we have almost total autonomy. We very rarely at Morris get any kind of direction from above other than do a good job in your community, cover what needs to be covered, be responsible to your readers. When it comes to finances, obviously we're joined at the hip with our corporate office, and they have a great deal to say about what we do. But we like to think that differentiation between the economic side and the news side is very important. And when it comes to news, in Brainerd, I'm the one who makes the decision.
I wonder if you could both just talk a little bit about your websites, because I know our piece there said you used to have had a website for quite a while, actually, haven't you?
Actually, it was longer than I thought.
Longer than you knew?
Yes, I was surprised that we were up that early. 1999 sticks in my mind because that's when newspapers tended to make a lot of decisions as to whether to go with a paid model or advertising supported model, which will be another question. But yeah, we've grown by leaps and bounds, and like I say, we have about 100,000 unique visitors come to our website every month. We have about 1.5 million to 1.7 million page views every month, and it continues to grow.
And what's your website called?
It's BrainerdDispatch.com.
BrainerdDispatch.com. And how about yours, Bill?
Ours is sctimes.com. We are approaching 5 million page views a month. We, and again, as I mentioned before, our mobile, which has really been sort of self-generated, is getting about 89,000 page views.
Could you explain what that means, mobile?
Mobile is you can get a mobile application on your cell phone. So if you're a traveler, or even tonight when you go home, if you go to m.sctimes.com, our website is conformed to your mobile phone, so that you can go through, read the stories, but rather than trying to scroll left and right, up and down, it's formatted so that it fits right on your phone.
Now, do your websites have just a portion of your print daily, or is it all there on your website?
Well, in our case, it is virtually 100% of what we produce goes online. And I don't know if we want to get into that discussion right now, but there's a huge debate going on in the newspaper industry right now as to whether that's a smart idea. Because I mentioned 1999 as being kind of a pivotal time in the newspaper industry. That's when our company, and I think many others, looked at it and said, okay, are we going to put a pay-per-view model up there? In other words, if you want to read our newspaper on the web, you have to pay a subscription somehow and put it behind a firewall, put all the content back there. Or will we go the other direction, keep it free, and try and sell enough advertising to support it? Well, most newspapers went with the advertising supported model. A very few went with the paid model. Today they're revisiting that, and a lot of major corporations, the owners of the Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch, for example, is looking at all of the papers in his company to say, gee, the Wall Street Journal is a paid model. If you want to read it, you've got to pay for it. He thinks he may do that for all of them. So it's a real debate as to which is the best way to go. Bill, you may have some thoughts on that too.
Our current method is we actually have more online than you get in print.
Really?
We have our entire print product put up online, but then you get photo galleries and videos and audio cast and extra blogs that you couldn't get through the print product. I think the future will be, no time soon, but I think the future will be a free and paid model, where there's X amount you can get for free, but if you want to go deeper, you'll end up having to be paid. Mm-hmm. If you're already a subscriber, it's probably free all the time. But there will be some exchange there. And Terry brought up before, the one thing that we have, and that is of true value, is the local content. You know, if it's an AP story, you can get it virtually everywhere. And that's people's argument is, well, there's all this content on the web for free. Well, it is, and that is the free content by aggregators. But if you want to know what happened at last night's Brainerd City Council meeting, there's not very many sources you can go to get that. Or if you want the recap of the Brainerd Tech football game, mm-hmm. including the game photos, not everybody's out there covering that. And so that's the kind of content that may end up being the additional cost to get that information.
Do you belong to a national organization that tries to help you vision where this is going?
There are a number of them. The Newspaper Association of America is by far the largest, and they're kind of helping sponsor the debate, and a good many of the newspaper companies like Gannett and Morris and many others are actively involved in trying to figure out which way to go. I was going to make this comment. I asked my son a few months ago, I said, well, would you subscribe to the Brainerd Dispatch online? And he said, no, absolutely not. And I said, well, then how am I going to get money from the fact that you read the Dispatch? He said, well, micropayments. And he managed to hit on.
He said micropayments?
He said micropayments. And this is one of the things that they're discussing right now, where you as a consumer would put your credit card online with a provider. Let's say maybe it's Amazon.com or a PayPal type arrangement. And then if you wanted to read a particular article from a newspaper anywhere in the country, you could say, okay, I want to do that. And they would charge you 5 cents or 10 cents or 20 cents, whatever the going rate was. Or you could read an entire edition and you might pay 50 cents for that. So rather than paying a subscription for a month or for 6 months or for a year, you could pick and choose article by article through this system of micropayments. And I think that that may be the future of the newspaper industry and would allow us to get enough money in to continue to fund our newsrooms.
Wow, that's interesting. Have you explored that at all, Bill?
We have not gone down that road, but very much in tune to what's happening with that. It's one of probably the two main models that are out there that people are looking at, which makes a lot of sense. It gives the reader, puts them back in control again. And totally. I feel as a reader, this one's worth 5 cents. I'm willing to pay it. Another time, I might not be willing to. And again, from our standpoint, as it relates to the business model, if we publish it once, it doesn't matter. Again, that's sort of that big difference in the model being online is you don't have those overbearing expenses that you have to cover no matter what.
Do you dedicate staff just to your website now, both of you?
Actually, we did, and we no longer do that, at least on the news side. We had a separate online staff and then a separate news staff. And we've gone through what they've called convergence. We brought them back together again. And the reason behind that is we need everybody in the newsroom involved online, not just a few select people. So we're working harder to make sure that everybody is involved in both platforms, print and online. When it comes to selling advertising, we've tried it both ways, and I think the way that we're headed in the future is going to be online dedicated salespeople, because as Bill alluded to earlier, there's an educational process there. There's still a number of people out there that don't really understand online, so we're looking for people who are sophisticated, who can sit down with a customer and say, let me show you online.
That's really interesting. And I can see some risks involved in these pricing concepts, offending people, maybe losing readers if it gets to be too expensive. I know some of the national publications are starting to charge for in-depth information that you just don't get on their regular website. You're optimistic, though, about this business, aren't you, both of you?
I am certainly. The fact that we have more readers now than we've ever had before proves that the product that we're putting out is of interest. The challenge for us